Hello, thanks for looking in on this YouTube. So this YouTube is a continuation of a series that I've done where I talk about real court cases that appeared in court in the 1990s. I disguise the names and alter a few little details to protect the identity of the person. But my purpose really for doing this is to put over what sort of people come to court and what sort of things happen, and to explain a bit about one of the roles of probation service. So during the 1990s, when I worked in the probation service, our role was quite generic, and now they've become much more specialised. But what I really liked was that we worked back then in a very team-like way, and we supported each other. And in fact, the team that I was in, we were able to, for a period, manage ourselves without a manager being present in our team. And we used to meet as a team, allocate the work fairly. We used to self-allocate. We used to get on. And the way we worked was, back then, was you'd spend a day at court. You would spend 1 or 2 days in the office where people came to see you that you were supervising. Then possibly 1 or 2 days a month you'd be on the road. You'd be driving to prisons to visit people in prison that were on your caseload. In those days, the majority of the people that you saw were people that you were supervising, and you'd probably spend a day a week working on a court report. Now, sometimes I used to be on court duty on Mondays, so I'd actually see the case in the court on the Monday, and which gave me a bit of a head start because I'd already heard the facts, heard the case discussed in court, and that really helped greatly. And I knew a little bit about the defendant. As you know from a lot of the other reports that I discuss, there were problems back then, and one of the problems that we had very often, in my experience, was we didn't get the summary of facts and the paperwork from the police and the prosecution services to do the report. And that's crucial, isn't it? And the other thing that I noticed back then, and it's never been discussed in the media, was that the record of previous convictions were often incorrect. So there you go. But anyway, the fact that we used to work in a team-like way was very, very supportive. And I think now the probation service have you've got all different specialist roles now. And I think there was an advantage to work in this sort of quite generic way. And I thought it was really, really useful. Anyway, the court case that I want to talk about today is a drink drive offence, which was very, very typical of many reports that I wrote. As a rule of thumb, I used to find very often that people who were caught drink driving often had things going wrong in their lives, stressful circumstances, possibly problems at work, possibly a bereavement, that kind of thing, a breakup of a marriage partnership, and sometimes, mostly men, were caught drink driving, and it may mean that the man had reverted back to behaviour, drinking and the like, to before they were married, for example. So that seemed quite a common factor, and this is one of the reasons why I'm doing these discussions. Is a lot of people are quite tough on crime and want everybody to be sent to prison, and we've had this increasing approach of sending more and more people to prison, and we're not tough enough on crime for years and years now, and we are sending more people to prison, and actually very often it's damaging. And I think if you get a whole picture of the person and what they're like, I think you're less likely to think prison is appropriate. So driving with excess alcohol is an interesting one because the court do vary quite substantially how they deal with people for drink driving. And it tends to be on the reading and the circumstances and whether the person was driving dangerously or not. Now, if somebody was just over the limit, they're very likely to get a financial penalty and a ban from driving. And it doesn't just stop there, because people's insurance, once they've been caught for drink driving, is very difficult, because many insurers will not insure people, or it's horrendously very expensive to get car insurance once you've been arrested for drink driving. So that's an important message. The good news is that the number of drink driving offences has been going down year on year massively since it was first brought in. So that is good news. And the number of accidents caused by drink drivers has been going down too. Just as well, because, the trend towards SUV cars are much more likely to cause very, very serious damage to people, to pedestrians and to other vehicles, than the older, smaller models. So, somebody drink driving in an SUV, could have potentially very serious outcomes, in my opinion, particularly to third parties on the road. So, in this case, what I found with drink drivers as well, so anybody who was 2 or 3 times over the limit, then the magistrates would be a bit worried, and that could be an indicator that somebody's got an alcohol problem. And that's why they would ask for a court report to be prepared. And like I said, during the court report interview, other things would come out, that things were going on in the person's life very often. So, just so that you get some sort of understanding. And even so, if somebody's got a drink problem, really, it really needs addressing, because we want to make sure that this person sorts themselves out and goes in a positive direction in life. So that really, I feel, is the role of probation. And we're independent of the prosecution and defence. And our role in writing a court report is to make recommendations to the court and to have an independent eye on the person and to inform the court more about the person, what they didn't know before. Okay? So what I did find, and through doing court duty, I observed, through the years that I worked for probation, was when the court did react differently according to who you were sometimes. And this I find a little bit worrying. Now, I'll give you an example. I was in court when a few celebrities have been caught drink driving. They might be, TV star or somebody quite well known in the media. And when these people get caught drink driving, they might get a high reading, which normally result in a court report. In my experience, nearly 9 times out of 10, the magistrates wouldn't ask for a court report in these cases. They would just give them a fine. It's like, well, you're a celebrity, you can sort your own life out. You've got the money, you've got the resources, And interestingly, I remember once a GP appeared in court, of all people. Maybe he had lots of stress going on in his life, where he got arrested for drink driving. And not only that, quite erratic driving. And I think it was borderline. He could have got sent up to Crown Court, for this driving incident that occurred. It quite worried. But again, they just issued a financial penalty, and that surprised me, because I knew that had he been anybody else other than a GP or celebrity, they would have adjourned for a court report, because that was my experience, and I was right, So we have, for today's case, a 35-year-old man, and the incident occurred 3 days before Christmas. And it was around 4 o'clock in the morning when no other cars were around on the road. And he stood out like a sore thumb, driving quite slowly and exceptionally cautiously along the road. And they kind of saw him, and they saw him stop and get out of the car, and he appeared very unsteady on his feet. So they went, hello. So they went over and breathalyzed him, and he was found to be 3 times over the limit, which is quite high. So the court asked for all options. So all options was a code that the magistrates used to indicate that they were thinking of all options, including custody, for this offence. So we had to do a report addressing, if you like, the different options open to the court. According to the police and the Crown Prosecution Service, he had no previous convictions, but as in other cases, he declared, and it came to light, that he did have a previous conviction for driving with excess alcohol a number of years ago, but should have been on his record but wasn't there. Very bad this, people's record convictions being incorrect. So this was the last Friday before Christmas. Chap was an electrician. They were coming up to Christmas. They decided it was Friday night. Although they were working the next day on the Saturday, they said, right, Friday night, let's have a bit of a Christmas get-together. So they assembled at a friend's house, and they went off to the pub on foot. And at the pub, he drank 6 or 7 pints of beer, and went back to his friend's house where he had 2 or 3 bottles. And the plan was he slept on the sofa at his mate's house. But he woke up during the night about 3 o'clock in the morning and thought, Christ, do you know what? I'm really worried about work tomorrow. I need to go back to my digs and get the alarm clock on. Very important, I need to get to work. So, foolishly, off he went in his car back to his digs. And the police caught him outside his digs, you see. He thought, foolishly, having slept for a few hours, that the alcohol would have gone out of his body. But it hadn't at all. He hadn't allowed sufficient time. If anything, it's probably really high. It takes hours and hours for alcohol to leave the body. And what he said about his offence, and I found it interesting and nice, that he felt genuinely guilty and sorry that he put other people at risk. And he actually said it, and I quoted him as saying that I was very stupid, I was utterly foolish, what I did was totally unnecessary. Although nobody was around, I unacceptably put others at risk. Anybody who was on the roads, I put people at risk. And so, in my opinion, he showed very poor judgment, and he hadn't allowed enough time for alcohol to go through his system. What he had done, because he knew he was going to get a ban, he'd already sold his van that he used for work, and he'd made arrangements for a mate to drive him to and from work all the time. So when you're a self-employed electrician, major disaster, isn't it, when you lose your licence? So talking about his background, his background. He grew up in London, quite a relatively happy childhood, despite several adversities that he faced and slightly difficult circumstances. First of all, his mum left the family home when he was about 6 months old, and he was brought up by his dad, and he had 2 older sisters who he got on really well with. And his dad and the 2 older sisters kind of worked as a team. He, having been brought up by his dad, who gave up work for a period to look after him, and really apparently was a brilliant dad, and he expressed loads of admiration for his dad for bringing him up and his 2 sisters on his own. And, to hold down a job and look after them and all this sort of thing. The other thing was that he had a very serious hearing impediment from birth. But he coped quite well, very well, in that he kind of learned to talk, not exactly 100% clearly, but talked quite well. And he could lip read people. He coped by lip reading. which quite a skill. So, and he managed to go through mainstream education rather than go to a school for people with hearing impairments and the like. And he left at age 17 with the equivalent of about 7 O levels, so he did really well. Initially went to work in a factory and warehouses, age 17, but turning point came age 23 when he said, well, I felt my life was going nowhere, I might as well have a go at this. And at the time, Euro Disney near Paris was opening up and they were advertising, and he responded to an advert to go and work at Euro Disney. And he felt, well, I've got nothing to lose, my life's going nowhere, let's try and do something a bit adventurous, age 23. So off he goes to France, which I think all on his own. And he did quite well at Euro Disney, but it was for a set period, his contract. But he liked it out there and was making efforts to learn French. He went to the Académie Française. And me being half French, I was quite interested in this, you see. So there you go, a bit of personal bias perhaps. But anyway, and he made a point of learning French, which he went to evening classes, credit to him. And he went and got a job in a restaurant in Paris, central Paris, washing up. Did well, they liked him, and they said, look, son, we would like to teach you how to cook. And he gradually learned how to become a chef on the job, which I think was fantastic. So he was there for 5 years, living in France. Age 28, he thought, right, I'm going to come back to England now. Kept in contact with various friends, and a friend of his managed to get him a job as a service engineer, electrical service engineer. And he settled down. He trained to become an electrician at college, which I think is great. Got married, worked as a self-employed electrician. And then suddenly his life kind of spiraled because he found out that his partner, his wife, was having an affair with another man. And about 4 months before the offence, he moves out, went to live in digs. What worried me was his digs were above a pub, so easy access to alcohol perhaps every day. And he was spending every weekend with his sister. So I was prompted there at this stage really to have a long and detailed discussion about his drinking habits. How much was he drinking? How much alcohol? Was he able to control it? And he convinced me actually that he would have quite a lot to drink with his workmates. But day by day, he hardly drank ever, was able to control his drink and put it over to me. He didn't have a drink problem. So that being the case, I proposed that he be made subject to a community service order. Yes, he was having problems readjusting to life outside marriage. I kind of discussed that with him. But I think, community service order is quite tough actually for somebody who's working very often 6 days a week, and then he's got to work on the 7th day on a Sunday for the community, doing gardening for the elderly, but well worthwhile way paying back society. And I put him at very low risk of reoffending. And indeed, to my knowledge, according to my records, he hasn't reoffended. So, job done, good job. I hope you agree with me that community service was a much better proposal than him going to jail. What would it have done? He would have come out a much worse person, having spent a small period in jail, say 4 months or whatever in jail. Would have lost his job, would have been brutalised in jail and the like. Community service is appropriate, and I hope you agree with me. Thanks for sticking with me. I hope you find it interesting, and I hope you find do have a look at my other YouTubes. I hope you find them interesting too. And all the very best now, and have a lovely day. Cheers now. Bye-bye.